This conference
Well-
will now be
Welcome back, Kathy.
Thank you. I had a lovely vacation. And now it's all hitting at once back here in Borrego.
Yeah, it's the problem with vacations.
I
You
know.
come back. Yeah.
I haven't even had a chance to look at my email yet. It's scary. Okay, so let's see. I feel like romper room. I see Tammy and I see Diane and I see Dave. And Jeff is here. Yes. Okay. I think we can call this meeting to order. Let us do that. Call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll stand and recite the pledge, please. There's a flag, a beautiful flag on our computer. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome back, Kathy.
Mhm.
It's time for roll call. Director Duncan.
Here.
Hi, Dave. Director Johnson.
Here.
Hello, Director Baker.
Here.
Good morning, good morning. Director Rosenblum.
Here.
Hi, Paul. And then President Theist.
I'm here.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah. Nice to see you back too, Paul.
It's good
Well,
to see you.
I think
all.
you're back.
Yeah, I'm.
Yeah.
I'm on the East Coast, but I'm returning back to the West Coast tomorrow. So
Okay.
hence the
How was
sweater.
What was it? What was Puerto Rico like?
It was pretty intense. The biggest disaster, honestly, was the electrical system. There's just not a lot of power available, and there's a lot of hardships that come from that. So we were doing a lot of food distribution, seemed to be the main activity.
Yeah, I certainly hope things improve there.
Yeah.
Over time. Seems like they've been long neglected.
They have been.
So we have an agenda before us, and I will entertain a motion to approve that agenda if there are no objections.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Dave. We have moved by Diane, seconded by Dave, and if there is no discussion on that, I will call the roll to approve the agenda. Director Baker,
Aye.
Director Duncan,
Aye.
Director Johnson,
Aye.
Director Rosaboom,
Aye.
and I will also approve it. So we are good to go with unanimous approval of the agenda. And the next item is our comments from the public and requests for future agenda items. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak this morning on a topic that's not already on the agenda? Hearing no one trying to unmute, I will move down to the comments from directors. I guess I was already ahead of the game by talking to Paul out of order, but does anyone have any comments this morning? Diane.
Yes, I'm. This is sort of early, very early thoughts. I'm seeing a lot of activity in the last few months, both at BWD and with the Water Master, having to do with water quality in the valley. And I'm beginning to wonder, or I should say the basin, I'm beginning to wonder about forming a subcommittee to sort of try to get a handle on all the different issues. And wondering about, at some point are discussing whether we would make it a subcommittee. I think it would have to be ad hoc to have outside members, non-BWD board members on it. So just bringing that up.
Okay. Perhaps when we are, if you're back from your meeting, are you still planning to do that? Leave at 9:30?
Yes, although I think I might wait. I'll text Bree and see if I can let me know when they've figured out what they want to say. I would just I think we
We have
just
two
had to
microphones on.
dial in.
We
I don't know
had
what that,
alien interference there.
yeah.
So Diane may have to excuse herself at some point during the meeting for a Prop 68 related topic, but she will, if she leaves, she will rejoin us as soon as she can.
Yes.
I would like to thank Tammy for leading the BWD through October for the most part, and doing a great job, I'm sure. And welcome to Paul again. I'm glad you're almost back, but I know you're probably in transition mode to whatever's next. Where are you going after Borrego? Where's your new
Yeah,
position?
so actually to Korea.
Korea.
Yeah,
My
I
goodness.
found a
I
job
hope
with
South Korea.
South Korea. Yeah, it's with the Service to the Armed Forces with the Red Cross. I'll be
Wow.
stationed at Camp Humphreys and managing volunteers at the medical facilities there.
Wow. Well, we wish you all kinds of safe journey and good luck when that happens.
Yeah, thanks. There's a lot of paperwork between now and then, but
Yeah, I bet.
What part of Korea is
Okay.
Humphreys in, Paul?
it's right outside of Incheon. So I had to look it up as well when I got the offer, but it's one of the biggest US bases outside the continental US. So it's quite the operation.
My goodness. Yeah. Wow.
Congratulations.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's a big change, but I've volunteered with the Red Cross for a really long time, so a chance to actually make a living with the Red Cross is a real treat. So
Yeah, to get paid to do good work. That's always nice.
yeah,
So when is your actual departure? Or do you
it's
have yeah.
still a function. I have to get a clearance for medical and to be on the base. So once all that paperwork gets in, so there's sort of a soft start date in the end of November, but it's really a function of how long it takes to get all the paperwork through.
Okay.
There's a couple big bureaucracies that I'm contending with.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Any other comments from the directors? All righty, then do we have any, let's see, correspondence from the public, Mr. Poole? None? Okay, well, that means we can go down to section 2, the items for board consideration and possible action. 2A is our consent calendar. We have our monthly resolution for the virtual meetings, and we have the meeting minutes from September 13th, 2022. We didn't go that far back. So if there are no corrections or other,
Madam President, could I just share
yes,
something with the board before you vote on the extension?
yes.
So many of you, hi, good morning. Many of you probably saw that the governor has announced in advance that his COVID emergency proclamation is going to end, or declaration, in February of next year. And what that means is that virtual meetings like the one you're having now and you're reapproving now will only be allowed from February until December of 2023 if somebody, for example, at San Diego County Health Services recommends social distancing, because in order to have these remote meetings, there needs to be a recommendation in writing from either a local or state official that allows or that highly recommends social distancing. So I guess what I'm trying to say very ineloquently is that unless in February the County of San Diego continues to recommend social distancing, then the board's not going to be able to do it in quite the way we're doing it now. We're going to have to revert to the old Brown Act method, which is allows for people to do teleconferencing, but you're going to have to put your name and address and all that on the actual on the agenda if you're not going to be physically in the boardroom somewhere. So I just wanted to give the board a heads up. That's still a few months off, but this isn't going to last forever unless COVID comes back or unless these social distancing recommendations continue now that the governor has told us he's going to wipe away his order. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe there's an update to the update, and Cyrus will probably be sharing that when it's his turn to speak.
Okay.
So, so I think we're in pretty good shape. But thank you, Steve. It's been a challenging time for all of us. Are there any corrections or to the minutes that anyone noticed? September was so long ago. No. And if not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll move.
So we
I'll
have a
second.
motion on the floor. Paul, who seconded?
Tammy?
Tammy, thank you. So we have a motion to approve the consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Any public comment on that? If not, I will call the roll to approve the consent calendar. Director Baker,
Aye.
Director Duncan,
Aye.
Director Johnson,
Aye.
Director Rosenboom,
Aye.
and I also approve. So again, we have a resolution, and thank you, Wendy. I know your note taking and minutes are almost 100% impeccable, so thank you. Item 2B is a legislative advocates report. I believe we are seeing all of our BB&K advocates this morning. And Jeff, I'll let you introduce everything and everyone. Or maybe not. Okay. What do I have here on the agenda? Do you want to, Cyrus, do you want to go first? And then we'll have Anna and Lowry go and do their reports. Am I frozen?
No, you're fine, Kathy.
We can start if
Okay.
you want.
Okay. So I'm not hearing local folks.
Oh,
So
Jeff's
go
saying
ahead.
timeout. I see Jeff giving us hand gestures of a timeout.
Okay. Why don't, I think they can hear, they just can't talk. So why don't you go ahead, Anna and Lowry?
Okay.
That would be fine.
Great. Well, it's great to be with you all today. We are in an interesting time right now because Congress is in the midst of elections, as I'm sure you all have been seeing around the televisions and in your mailboxes. There are elections will be in 2 weeks. So Congress has been out of session for everyone to be home and work on their elections and have time in the districts as well. What they did prior to this and at the end of September was to ensure there was not a government shutdown. They passed a continuing resolution to fund the government through December 16th of this year. As soon as they come back from the election, they are going to take time and have to negotiate and decide among the Senate and House what FY23 appropriations will look like, and specifically being able to pass the Interior and Environment Appropriations Bill. We expect this will happen in a larger omnibus, And to recall for all of you, the Interior and Environment Appropriations Bill is the bill in which the congressionally directed spending request that's been made on the district's behalf is in. So we will continue to work through that and work, our best to make sure that that request stays in through the final process. We are also going to be monitoring and working on how they are developing and funding other funding programs that would be of interest and priority to the district to help fund other projects as well as we go through that. Larry, anything on that? Or any other Christmas trees?
I think that's the funding. They've left a lot until after the election for their lame duck session. So in addition to any drama over appropriations and funding, which I think we're optimistic that they will pass a full year funding bill in December, maybe closer to Christmas than December 16th. They've also left the annual Defense Authorization Act that they've got to pass every year to be done. And it looks like they're going to pair that with the Water Resources Development Act that usually authorizes Army Corps of Engineers projects, but sometimes they add a bunch of other water stuff to it. This year, I think they're just going to focus on the Corps, pair that with the defense and push that through as well. And then if the Senate turns, and it just takes one seat to do that, then the Democrats will also have enormous pressure and priority to try to get use floor time getting additional judges confirmed before January. So it's kind of quiet right now for the next couple of weeks, and then it's going to be a busy December.
And as we come into what House and Senate majorities will be, we're going to also be looking at who will end up being chairman and ranking member of committees and subcommittees, and how those roles will dictate our ability to get funding, as well as what programs we're going to need to be really working towards in the next Congress as well. So we'll be working on that, and we'll update you all as that develops, and make sure we have a report for you once we have that information from Congress.
Great. I would imagine that things are pretty distracted right now in Washington with everything that's going on. So we appreciate you standing by and making sure that things happen, so that are
Absolutely.
beneficial to our district. So I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Do we have you back, Jeff?
Yes, I do believe I'm here.
I hear you now.
Thanks,
How about-
Jessica.
Yes.
Okay, so anyway, thank you, Anna and Larry. Anna, I was kind of busy watching Jessica try to fix my microphone. Did you update the board on the potential schedule for the ISA Padilla appropriation?
Yes.
Yep. So we talked about how that will end up coming in an omnibus that they'll pass, when they come back. One thing for everybody to know that we did not talk about, though, is once that passes, it goes to the federal agency. So it'll go to EPA in this instance. And there's a process from there that we'll have to undertake to get the funds actually to the district itself. But in terms of it passing Congress, yes, we're expecting it to pass by the end of the year.
Beautiful. And then for those of you who aren't familiar with that, Daryl Issa and Alex Padilla have both added BWD projects to their appropriations list. I'm not quite sure what the right term is, but for projects that are near and dear to their heart, BWD has made that list. And what that means for us is the installation of a transmission main in Borrego Springs Road, and then the replacement of all the pipelines in the Sun Gold area. Estimated cost $4.3 million. It's 80% funded, so yes, 3.6 or 7 million, I think, was the final amount.
They put forward our full request, which was really spectacular. We knew that the programs were capped at what awards could be, is about 3.497 something. Yeah, decimal points and things like that. And we were really fortunate that our full request was put forward. We were strategic with what we put forward to make sure it was the highest and best use of value for the district.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you. That's great.
Yep, so fingers crossed that happens. That'll be an excellent Christmas present. Can't wait.
Yes, I'll say. So Cyrus.
Okay, actually, let me do a little brief introduction.
Okay, thank you.
Boy, what a day Cyrus had yesterday. He actually flew in from Sacramento into Borrego, and boy, are his arms tired. But Yeah, she got up this morning, made it, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And so, yeah, Cyrus is going to give the Sacramento update and maybe tell us a little bit about his flight from Sacramento to Borrego yesterday. But he had he had an epic trip. So
I did. I had tailwinds that is the fastest speed I've ever across ground I've ever reported on my aircraft. So yeah, this was a delightful flight. Getting home is going to be a little more interesting, but we'll see how that goes. So yeah, I'm here in person. It's been a year and a half since we started working together, and I just felt like I need to get down and meet everyone in person. But also, more importantly, Jeff's going to give me a tour of the district. And we're going to kind of see the critical points that we've been talking about all this time. Because Jeff tells me about them, and then I forget 3 hours later because I can't really connect it to a place. So we're going to take a couple hours after the meeting, drive the whole district and talk about the points that are active right now and plan for the future. So I kind of had a mental map in my head of what we're talking about when we're going over these things. So I did want to come down today though because the session's over, so I can do an end of session wrap up. And this is a good time also to talk about what I tracked, things I didn't report on that maybe I should. So I want to talk a little bit about that as we go into 2023. I'll talk about what I did talk to Jeff about. So typical year for us, just over 2,000 bills introduced, about 1,100 made it to the governor, and he vetoed about 170. That's so you had about a 50-50 chance of a bill getting signed into law this year, which is fairly typical. Significant budget actions. There were another $200 million for Sigma implementation, and more is expected in 2023. There's, you guys have enjoyed some pretty adequate funding here this year, so I don't know that you're in a position to utilize any more, but there is another $200 million round of Sigma going on right now with a deadline at the end of November. Like I said, I think you guys are working hard to spend the money you got, after the last cycle. So I'll talk to Jeff, but I don't know how much more we can really jump on this year. Throughout the year, I tracked 32 water-related bills. Now, I don't always report all those up. Some of them, a handful of those I talked to Jeff, and Jeff says, no, we don't need to report on those. There were Sigma bills, but they weren't applicable here because of your status as an adjudicated basin. So there were no major Sigma bills, but and so the technical cleanups and stuff that I did come across, I didn't feel was necessary to call them out to your attention. The other big bill, of course, was 1157, which related to indoor water use efficiency standards. Now, again, this was probably the most hard-fought bill of the year, but because of your terrain here in your environment, your indoor gallons per person per capita per day amount is, you're probably not even concerned about the 2030 number. You guys don't have big giant lawns here, so those are the communities that are most concerned about it. So I talked to Jeff about it throughout the year, but we didn't feel it was really necessary to elevate it to the point of briefing the board. One thing that is effective, again, we didn't bring it to you because it was sailing through without any opposition, so it actually wasn't work that passed on consent sometimes, which means there was no hearing. But that was AB 2449 on open meetings. It takes effect in January 1st, and it's going to change some of the elements of remote meetings, one of which, under certain declared states of emergency, you don't have to post the location of a remote member. So that's going to give a little bit of relief. Given a brief, it's a complex bill, so it's a little beyond the scope of this call to try to delve into it. It's something I should brief thoroughly, give it to Jeff, and let's have a handout ready when we're going to talk about it. But yeah, that passed through without really a campaign, so that's why it wasn't really a focus of a big lobbying effort. The other one, and this does affect you, for the reasons I'll explain, we did bring it to your attention, but that was SB 222 on low-income rate assistance. That would be a big issue here. It's just that it didn't become the controversy it could have because it had an attachment that was contingent upon state funding, and no state funding was identified. In other words, it was kind of an empty bill, until somebody identified funding. Well, the governor vetoed it, and his veto message was kind of ominous. So basically it says, I'm vetoing it because you guys didn't identify funding and we're facing budget shortfalls next year. So while the water community kind of did a brief happy dance that the bill got vetoed because they were worried about administrative costs, the reason it got vetoed, I think, really just invites, another round next year with money attached to it. I'm afraid the money might be a tax on water, which we, fought rather vigorously here 2 and 3 years ago. So we're going to have to watch that, really closely, and if it does look like it has legs and it's going to have funding attached to it, I am going to have to bring that to you into something that would profoundly affect your district. The reason is the amount of money involved would probably, for the rate assistance, would probably be less than the administrative costs you would have to incur in order to implement the program, at least the way it was in 222. So this, in other words, the fear was very disproportionate administrative costs, and that could hit you guys pretty hard. So, we're always watching a segment, but there's nothing to talk about. I'm always watching these other things that could affect you administratively. We didn't feel that given the progress of the bill at that point, we had to bring to the board and get an official position on it. But that could change very radically as we go into 2023. But it kind of depends on, we have to see what's going to happen with the budget. Everyone believes there's going to be a big budget downturn, but the last estimate I saw is like only in the range of about 10%. And a 10% retraction off the current budget we have would still be larger than the 2019 budget, because we had huge surpluses this year. So wait and see, and we'll see how this rolls out. But next year you could be legislatively much more active next year than you were this year. All right, going back here to my notes. So let's talk about the budget. I mentioned there was money there for Sigma, but there's also a tremendous amount of money out there for recycling. And there's a lot of money out there for septic to sewer connections. So I was chatting with Jeff this morning. I know you guys did a feasibility study here a while back about recycling, and it doesn't pencil out right now. But given the amount of money that's out there and will be out there for the next 3 years, I'm wondering if it isn't worth a look to combine septic to sewer, which would increase your flow rates and money for recycling, because there's $300 million out there over 3 years. And there's even an additional $280 million pot of money that's discretionary with the State Water Resources Control Board, where they can place money for recycling projects and other projects that support water efficiency. So I don't know what will come of it, but I think it might merit a fresh look, given the budget status and what we think is out there, for the near future. Final topic, not a lot to talk about, but we're 2 weeks before midterm election here, so I couldn't go through a whole meeting where I come down here and not talk about elections. But not a lot of excitement around here, because you have your state senator and assembly are not going to change this year. You're still going to have Brian Jones and Randy Bopel. However, the choice, Brian Jones has turned out 2024. However, the choice on part of Bopel to stay in his assembly seat, that precludes him from later running for the Senate. So you are going to have an open Senate seat in 2024. The reason is term limits said you can spend 12 years in one house, but if you elect to change, you're limited to 6 years in the assembly and then 2 terms in the Senate. Well, this would be Randy Bopel's 4th term in the assembly. So he's now off the old track where he could have served 6 and then 8. So anyway, but like I said, for the next 2 years, everything's going to remain exactly the same for you. So that covers the notes I wanted to, that covers everything I had on my agenda. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them, but otherwise, that's my in-person report.
Does anyone have any questions of Cyrus? Sounds like you covered it very well.
Thank you. Then I'll relinquish my seat in front of the eyeball back to Jeff.
Yeah.
Well, and Cyrus, we're really glad that you were able to come down in person. And,
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
And scope out our beautiful area. So,
We'll take them on a tour as soon as the meeting's over.
yeah, I'm glad to hear that. All right, let's see, item 2C is the easement agreements with T2 Borrego for the wastewater treatment plant monitoring wells.
That sounds familiar. Why don't I take that little rascal?
Yes.
Okay, so basically, geez, this was in 2017. Wow, amazing. BWD's discharge permit to operate its wastewater treatment plant expired. And so it's a 10-year process that the regional board goes through and issues discharge permits that are good for 10 years. So in 2017, the district received its discharge permit, and one of the requirements was to install 3 new monitoring wells to monitor groundwater quality around the existing percolation ponds. And the map here on the screen shows, let's zoom that. Jess, could you zoom out so we can see the whole page? If you're not already, I just can't see that. Anyway, so that there are 3 blue dots on the map, if you can see the entire map, the entire exhibit, but those 3 blue dots, it shows what, WWD TP3 at the top. That just shows an example of one of the 3 well locations. Jess, could you zoom out a little bit? Or maybe that's just my screen that's doing that, but I just would like to, oh, awesome. Okay, so then there are the other 2. And then the district already has 1 monitoring well that is to the south of the percolation ponds. So that's why we're only adding 3 new locations, because the southern exposure, so to speak, is already covered. So the state required us to install these 3 monitoring wells, and we're going to have clustered wells in which we will have 2 different elevations on each one of these 3 locations at approximately 40-foot deep and 100-foot deep. And then there are 6-inch holes in the ground. And so basically when it's done, we'll have, in essence, 6 new sampling points, 2 clustered wells at each one of those 3 locations that will monitor water quality going forward. Now, honestly, it was a surprise to myself personally and some others here at the district that when we came back to do the work, the district doesn't own the property on which the percolation pond sits. It's still T2 property. And you can actually see that kind of jagged line on the western edge of the exhibit there. That shows the BWD property line. So basically T2 Borrego owns everything to the east of that red line. So the vast majority of that parcel, 80% of it is owned by T2. So, and honestly, I did not know that. And so we, with kind of hat in hand, had to go to T2 and say, oh, by the way, we need to drill these wells and it's on your property. And so thanks to Kathy and Shannon, we started talking about this and worked together. And I think one of the requests from T2 Borrego was to relocate the monitoring wells. The initial location was, I just say in general, closer to the percolation pond, and the percolation pond is that football field looking rectangle there in the bottom right corner. So the original locations of the wells were closer, physically closer to the percolation ponds, and then T2 made the request to move them further away from the percolation ponds to potentially handle any sort of future use that they might have. So we worked together on relocating the well locations to where those 3 blue circles are now. And we ran that by the Regional Water Quality Control Board. I'm sorry, the regional board Regional Water Resources Control Board that approved those locations. So these locations are okay with the regulatory agency. And so then we continued to discuss / negotiate with T2 on, okay, how do we make this work? Because basically we have these 3 dots and we need to get to them for 2 purposes. 1, to construct the well. And to do that, we're proposing the use of a temporary construction easement. And then we would also need access easements in perpetuity for the life of the well to be able to monitor the well. Because obviously if we're installing the monitoring wells, we need to get to them and pull periodic water samples and monitor the elevations. And so we needed, in essence, 2 different types of easements to accommodate this project. One being the temporary construction easement that would allow us to build the wells. Then the other one would be the access easements that would allow us to continue to access the wells and for the maintenance and operations and for the physically monitoring activities itself. So thanks to Shannon and Kathy at T2 Borrego, we've come up with these kind of subject to change. I mean, we think these are the alignments. I think Kathy and I want to talk about this a little bit more while they're out here this week. So these little purple lines might change a little bit, but fundamentally, this is what's needed. Basically, we have an easement agreement with T2 that would allow us to access these 3 locations for both temporary construction purposes. And we just need to, what that means, why they're different is the temporary construction easement is wider because we have obviously need to get a drill rig in there as opposed to the long-term access easement and monitoring and maintenance easement that's needed just to access the monitoring wells on a periodic basis. So the attached agreement that's in the packet has gone through multiple episodes of we'll call it ping pong negotiations. We'd comment, T2 would comment, we'd come on in their comments, they would comment on our comments. Everybody worked very well together. Thank you, Kathy and Shannon. And so the result is the agreement that's in the board packet. And because these exhibits are still in flux, staff and Kathy's agreed that we're not in a position to sign the agreement yet. So what I would like to do is to A, discuss the agreement with the board, answer any questions, and then B, hold off executing the agreement. And I actually would like to get approval of the agreement from the board today, the legal document itself. And then once these exhibits are finalized, and what I mean by it is these purple lines might move a little bit, or they might not. Kathy and I would like to just chat about it one more time to make sure that they are in the best spot for everybody. And then once those final purple lines are determined, then we'll make sure that the exhibits match, attach all the appropriate exhibits to the agreement, execute the agreement, and then we're done. And then BWD can proceed to bid the project and install the monitoring wells. And this project is part of the Prop 68 grant. So assuming the Prop 68 grant comes in here in a couple weeks, in let's say early November, we'll get that little rascal approved, and then we'd be ready to go ahead and actually bid the project and do the work and install the monitoring wells. So basically, that's what we're doing. And the agreement that precedes this exhibit in the packet is the document that we would like to, I'm happy to answer any questions about. And then ultimately, I'd love to get the board's approval and then finalize the exhibits and then execute once the exhibits are finalized. And then there's a little bit of a domino effect here because I've asked David to work with with his surveying crew to come up with legal descriptions. Obviously, we need to finalize where the purple lines are going to be exactly to prepare the legal descriptions. So there's going to be a little bit of a lag if we do make some changes to these purple lines to just fine tune the legal descriptions, but that shouldn't take a super long amount of time. And once again, we'll finalize the access and the temporary construction exhibits here, and then all the other exhibits that are part of this document, and execute it, and then go ahead and complete the project. That would be our plan. Any questions?
I think we're ready to take a look at the legal language.
Okay. Hey, Jess, could you go up to the top of the document? Zoom in. Hold eyes. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so let's see. Various recitals here referring to the exhibits. Percolation pond kind of being the operative term. That's kind of the whole point of this project. Talking about 6 clustered wells in 3 locations. In E, we're talking about temporary construction easements, which, as I mentioned before, is the wider easement that's needed to get the drill rig in. And then F there is our ability to continue to monitor the well subject to the terms and conditions of this document. So basically, this grant of easement is for that 20 by 20 foot space that's needed for the well site. So that would be the imprint that we're making, and that would have the kind of the long-term footprint. You know, and we don't want anybody else using our well sites, which is different than the access roads and the temporary construction access roads, because we don't care if they're used for other purposes. That's okay, but we just wanted to make sure that those well sites remain untouched. So they just have more stringent requirements pertaining to this 20 by 20 foot well site compared to the access roads, which are much less restricted. We just wanted to make sure that basically the 20 by 20 foot well sites are for BWD purposes only, and for the purpose of operating, inspecting, and maintaining the wells as necessary. And then what else do we talk about there? I guess we can keep going. Rights of access. Talks about, where did it go? Rights of access. Go back to, there we go. There we go. Thanks, Jess. So here we're talking about, okay. Just the condition that we must maintain the right of access, and that it must be not blocked or unsafe. So we will operate the right of access in that way. In terms of well ownership and maintenance, we're referring to here in 3.1, we're referring to Exhibit B, which will show the 20 by 20 foot well sites. And we're also defining the construction of the well language here, and that we're receiving the rights to construct the well under these terms. That it's up to the district to fund the installation of the well, as well as all the operations, maintenance, repair, and replacement activities, as well as decommissioning the well site. That's our responsibility. And then on the top of the next page, we talk about the initial construction. Will be done in accordance with the temporary construction easement that we're talking about. Once again, it's just kind of, the goal is to use the same road that we're going to use for the long-term access, but just for construction, it would be a kind of a temporary, wider easement that's needed just to get the drill rigs in and out. Then in 3.3, we talk about replacement and relocation of the well. I think kind of depending upon who's asking for it, if we're asking for it, it's up to the district to replace and relocate the well. I think the reverse is also true. If in the event T2 needed to ask us to relocate some of our wells and the state approved such a request, it would be T2's responsibility financially to reposition or reconstruct the well. And that would be if, like I say, if they had a use that popped up that our well site conflicted with, and that the regional board agreed that the alternative location was okay, T2 would then fund that relocation. And likewise, if the same thing happens and we need to relocate it for some reason, that would be our responsibility. Now, I'm not aware of these well locations being just kind of moved around willy-nilly. I mean, they were selected for a reason, so I don't anticipate the district wanting to or needing to move the well for the life of the well. Those 3 locations were selected and have been approved by the state. So sure, anything's possible, but I don't anticipate the district ever making a request to reposition or relocate the wells. So we're kind of happy with the way they are, and the state is happy with that location also. So that's kind of the most important part. Okay, so we can assign certain rights. This is the fun legal stuff, the waiver of the rights, governing law, and where notices will be sent. T2's offices there in beautiful Denver. And yeah, there we go. That's kind of legalese at the end. So basically that's the structure of the agreement. As I mentioned, we're talking about 2 different easements, one for temporary construction and one for the long-term access for operations, maintenance, and monitoring. And then we will fill in all of these exhibits here over the next couple days, or however long it takes. And then hopefully the board can approve it today. And once the exhibits are done, we will execute it and move on to actually do the work. There you go, Madam President. That's an overview of the T2 easement documents. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is there a cost that has been agreed on?
Technically, no. I mean, as these access roads have the alignments have changed, the exact square footages for each one of these alignments has changed. And then most recently, the district is now requesting, Kathy and I are going to talk about it and confirm that this is the best way to go, but that yellow line that's right below the square where it says assessor's parcel number or whatever, that says 2001, blah, blah. There's a yellow line that goes from like northwest to southeast and then takes a little jog and goes from southeast to northeast, right below the original perk pond. So that is that's a new alignment there, because we thought we could go inside our fence line on the other side of that red line initially. There's just not enough space on the berm of that old pond, and then there's a structure that would prevent large equipment from being able to go in and out of the site on our side of that red line. So, for example, we're now probably going to ask them for the rights to access using that yellow line that's on the south side of the fence line. That has not been included in the square footage yet. So as we're fine tuning exactly what we do need, the square footages that's needed to calculate the cost of acquisition have been changing. But I think we're fairly close. It's just, we need to just fine tune these exact alignments, and then we can calculate the exact square footage, which we have been doing all along. It's just we been making changes to those alignments. So we've given Kathy 2 or 3 different versions of the total square footage numbers, and they keep changing. Unfortunately, getting bigger because we end up thinking we need more and more space. So we just want to, now that we are here at the end of the process, we just want to make sure everything's right. The exact alignments and easements are exactly where they should be, and all the exhibits match. So just take a little bit extra time to make sure these very important yellow and purple and blue lines that were on the various exhibits are accurate and correct, and then we'll crunch the numbers based on the exact square footages for exactly what we're asking for. So to answer your question, Kathy, Dice, yes, we presented them numbers in terms of cost, but they're changing slightly.
Mm-hmm. So what you're asking today is for the board to approve the agreement itself.
Right.
And without knowing what the cost will be.
Kathy, do you remember what the latest number we gave you? 4,700?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. The latest exhibit I've seen shows a total of just over $15,000, which is based on, it looks like different pricing depending on if it is the temporary access or the long-term access, and different pricing for the well site versus the access route. And Kathy, when we looked at that, we appreciated that the BWD is being so careful to determine the length of these easements, and we appreciated all the detail. But I think looking behind how you came up with the numbers and the land value, I think that in the end, we'll just have a different basis of understanding for the value of this property. I know that this is somewhat vacant land here in Borrego, and I know that vacant land in Borrego is not expensive. But this land has particular value to us because it is a part of our specific plan area and important to Rams Hill. And so I think we have a difference in value there, but I also think that that doesn't matter in this instance, because we're willing to extend to BWD just the outside costs that it has taken us to negotiate these easements. And so Tammy and Paul and Jeff, thank you for your good work. I'm glad we are where we are today, which is having agreed on the language of the documents, even if the exhibits are still being tweaked. But I think, sort of rather than talking about what is the relative value of a square foot of land in Borrego, and this land in particular, we would be just for the sake of the basin, for the sake of the health of the Borrego Water District, willing to say, the cost to us out of pocket were our outside legal fees to review this. And so we would be happy to just say to the BWD, if you want to compensate us for our outside legal fees, we think that that's fair. And then we don't really have to talk about the land value. And our legal fees to date have been a bit higher than we would have expected. I think in the end, it ended up being a lot of back and forth on certain details. And we asked our counsel to review some details about a leaky perk pond just to make sure that there was no liability for that on our end. And so our costs were upwards of $15,000 in terms of outside legal costs. I'd be willing to discount that partially. I think some of that might have been a bit over-lawyered by outside counsel. And so we can, come up with a number that we think is reasonable, and hopefully what feels comfortable to the BWD covers our outside legal costs, and our internal costs for my and Shannon's time will of course be absorbed by us. We won't ask for the district to provide any compensation for that.
Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate the explanation. All right, board. Having seen and had this all explained to us, and thank you also, Tammy and Paul, for all your hard work and getting this to go forward, working with Kathy and Shannon and et al. So board, we're looking at approving the agreement for the easement in order to construct the 3 monitoring wells that we need to comply with water resources. So what say you?
Madam President, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Steve. Could we make anybody's motion? Could we make that subject to any little tweaks that need to be made? So any non-substantive changes that might need to be made, given that the exhibits are still under development? I wouldn't want the board to not give Jeff the authority to tweak those exhibits. So if we could make that motion subject to Jeff's discretion to tweak the exhibits as necessary, it would be helpful to the process. Thank you.
Kathy, this is Diane. I think I just heard that the costs for this land are liable to be higher than the roughly 15 that we think it is now, that it might be an additional 15 for the T2 outside legal. And I wonder if Tammy and or Paul have anything that they would like to say.
Can I
Go ahead.
speak to that?
Sure.
Before Kathy with a C. So T2 has proposed that Kathy, I'm just going to try to say what you said, that T2 does not charge the district for the use of the land. So whatever number our assessors value, that value is effectively, not the value is zero, the cost is zero. In part because the district and our assessor's value of the land is quite different than what T2 values the land. And so if we were to move forward with negotiations on the value of the land, and then you say what % of the land we use, and that's the stuff that BWD has been sending to T2. We use 2% here and 5% there against the total value. Since someone's boogieing on. Since we're apparently reasonably far apart in how BWD values the land and T2 values the land, which would then necessitate a continued long negotiation process where we come to some agreement over what value we're going to use. T2 has generously offered to say they are not going to charge us based on the value of the land that we're using in the easement. They just aren't going to charge us at all. Cost to BWD is zero. However, they are requesting that we do reimburse them for some discounted portion of the total legal fees. Somebody's definitely in the background boogieing there. Doesn't even have a name.
Whoever's
Roy.
not
Roy. Yeah. Hey, Roy. Thank you, Roy. So T2 is saying because we're far, in part because we're far apart on the value of what we think is the value of the land, what BWD thinks is the value of the land, and that's going to take a while to come to agreement on. We T2 are not going to charge you for that at all, but we are asking you, BWD, to cover some portion of our legal fees. And I think that's a very generous offer on their part for two reasons. One, it's just generous. They're not charging us for the use of the land, which is normal in easements. You pay for the use of land. And two, because if we were to go down that path, it would continue the negotiation, which has taken a very long time for both parties, and both parties are working together, but this has lasted a really long time, and we can just end it now, right, with subject to the tweaks on these maps, which I'm sure we'll come to terms on. We're avoiding a longer term protracted interaction with T2 where we come to agreement on the value. So there's a significant time savings and legal costs associated with that time savings, as part of sort of this two-part generosity of their offer. So it's fabulous, this offer that T2 and Kathy has made, and very happy, and I think the rest of the board should support it. Does that answer your question, Diane? Yeah, okay. And Paul?
And then Tammy, thank you so much for doing that. And then Diane, I thought I heard you say that T2's talking about an extra 15,000. So
Right.
were you saying that we're going to pay 30,000-ish? Because I don't think that's what Kathy Milky said. I think she was saying.
I think Diane misunderstood. Diane misunderstood, and Tammy just re-explained what Kathy had already said. So I think we're in good shape there. Paul, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank T2 for their generous offer in the interest of furthering the public good, and I appreciate that, and I also support, along with Tammy, this approach.
I really appreciate your recommendation, Paul and Tammy. That really helps a lot. I know that your conversations have been long and many, and I really am delighted with what you have all accomplished here, and it's very, very close to being completed, but just with the little tweaks on the map, we hope. So do I hear a motion to approve this agreement with, allowing for minor tweaks on the ultimate easement maps?
I move.
Thank you, Tammy. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Paul. So we have this motion to approve on the table. Are there any, would the public like to comment, or is there any discussion from the public? Any other discussion from the directors? Hearing none, I'm going to call the roll for approval of the motion. Director Baker.
Aye.
Director Duncan.
With some delight, aye.
Director Johnson.
Aye.
Director Rosenboom.
Aye.
And I also approve. So it's unanimous. We have an agreement. Yay.
Thank you.
And I know, and I'm glad to know that Jeff and Kathy Milky will be reviewing on the ground how the easement should work, and everything will be tweaked and recorded to everyone's satisfaction, I hope, by the next time we meet. That'll be great. Item 2D would be the 2022 Town Hall agenda and topics. Jeff, would you like to introduce this one?
I would love to. So let's see, it's time for our annual town hall meeting. Let's see, we've selected November 15th, and this time we extended an invitation to participate to the Water Master, And they, I think the vast majority have graciously accepted our invitation. And so what I've done is start to think through a logical progression of topics. And in the past, what we've done is kind of given a year-end review. And the term I've selected are kind of priorities for the following year from the BWD perspective. And I think there's a lot to talk about. I started to list some of the possible topics there, and there are kind of many, many others. That is a relative short, it's a very short list of what was accomplished last year. And so I would plan on adding to both of those lists. And so my idea would be to kind of, after Kathy's introduction, then to talk about what's going on at BWD. And then after that, to pass it on to the Water Master staff and allow Sam an opportunity to talk about the Water Master structure, history, responsibilities, go over topics such as water sales and revenues, then even discuss their upcoming priorities / projects. I know the Prop 68 is a big one for them. And I did hear Sam mention a couple times at their last board meeting that they is planning kind of an outreach event. I won't call it their version of the town hall, but some kind of Water Master only function. So maybe they could even advertise and talk about that upcoming event. And so my thought initially was to hear kind of the staff perspective on the rules and responsibilities of the organization, and then to hear from each one of the directors that decided to participate. And I think so far we have Mr. Bennett, got Martha, we've got Dave, and then, oh yeah, I think Shannon, I forget what, yeah, if Shannon was on the, Shannon responded or not, and I can't see the bottom of my list exactly if there was one. Is there one more name down there, Jessica?
Yes, so far you have 4.
Yeah, Shannon, yeah, there we go. So there we go, all 4. And then I'd love some input from the board, but I think it'd be kind of good to hear from each one of those directors about, I don't know, I think it'd be good to get a feel for each one of the directors' background, because I think it's a very, very impressive group. So, very brief, a little bit of their own kind of personal background, then their connection to Borrego. And then kind of my idea was, it would be interesting to hear what each member thinks their constituents are from their perspective. And then, glasses, and then to talk about how each member sees their role of the water in terms of the Water Master Board reaching sustainability, talk about some of the challenges, and closing comments. And so that will provide the Water Master an opportunity to kind of get out in front of the public here in Borrego, which I think would be great. I think there was a local resident who submitted a couple pages, it was maybe 1 page of fairly detailed questions that were included in the last Water Master Board packet. It would be nice if some of those topics could be covered and make sure that they're addressed as part of these presentations. And so that was my thought, is we'll hear from the Water Master. And then there's been a request to hear about the air quality monitoring program. And I think I have Seco there at the bottom to talk about the air quality program in terms of what we've done so far and the plans for the future, of which, thank you, board, very much. That what was that, 1 or 2 meetings ago, we approved the continuation of air quality monitoring for another 3 years. So I'd like to give Seco an opportunity to talk about that. And then here's a draft agenda that basically just copies what was in the staff report there. So anyway, this is just the beginning, my initial thoughts. Definitely open for discussion, change, elimination, addition, whatever the board feels would be most appropriate. These were just my initial thoughts for format of the upcoming town hall event. And this would be, as I mentioned, on the 15th. The library meeting room has been reserved. For those of you who would like to come out and attend personally, that would be fine. We will, even if social distance, I guess social distancing is still required, so we will make sure the room is set up appropriately. And then for those of you who aren't comfortable coming to the meeting, you can definitely participate via Zoom/GoTo.
The library has held a number of events post COVID emergency, and they're very adept at setting the room up appropriately. And with, the social distance, that's still kind of followed. It's just a matter of putting fewer chairs in there than they would normally put in. But
Yep, you nailed it, Kathy. And then talking to Kristen last week, she's going to give us the big meeting room, so take the partition out to give us as much space as possible. And then they even have a camera that's installed now that shows the entire room, kind of similar but different to what we have here, but they have a camera system set up for the broadcast.
I've used it there.
It shows the entire room, so it's nice.
The hybrid system works really easily, as long as their internet works. So the question I have so far is, now, has the water master decided whether this is an official meeting for them? Do they need to do the same procedure as we do, calling their meeting to order and taking roll and all that? Do we know whether that has to take place as well?
I think, would you agree, Dave? The answer is yes. I think Markman was fairly, especially when we got good response from the directors, that it wasn't just one of them saying, I'll be there, that we really did get 3 that were interested.
So we would have both opening procedures happening at the beginning. Okay.
And so what I'm envisioning is, once we go through this today, I'd love to start communicating directly with Sam and Jim and Martha and Dave and Shannon about, okay, the meeting's set. Now, obviously we can't tell people what they should and shouldn't say. I will suggest in a constructive way topics, following whatever the board instructs me that they feel is appropriate after our discussion today. So my plan would be to start communicating directly with each one once we get through our discussion today. So I have a better idea of what we would expect from each one of those 4 water master board members.
And it looks like, Tammy, have you volunteered to be the speaker on the year in review? Or was that just a misprint? So
I think on the first one I asked for volunteers, and I think when I wrote the agenda, I think I was assuming Tammy, but yeah, I'm still looking for any volunteers. Tammy.
Okay.
Really, anybody that has the desire.
Are we talking about the year in review? Is that what you were talking about? That?
Yeah, the BWD stuff. Just 10 minutes, and I'll provide all the slides, and we'll all.
Well, and I think that we should meet and talk about, I think that we should review our year with the highlights of what the items that really, what do I want to say, benefited our community. You really want to talk about, we don't want to drone on and on about everything, but I think about the things that would matter most to the people who live in Borrego, like the water tank replacement and pipe replacement, and some of the things that are that are going to be happening via the Prop 68 projects. And I also liked Jessica and Esmeralda's suggestion of talking about upcoming, the work that we hope to do with water conservation. So, these are things that we could work into that 10-minute talk that would, the items that would be of most interest to our community. And then I'm grateful that the water master wants to participate, because I do think that it's really nice to have, a lot of people don't see a difference between what we do and what the water master does, and to have the 2 entities there to actually speak to, what our responsibilities are would be very important, I think. So I'm happy about that. And go ahead.
In conjunction with that, Kathy, I think it would be really good to step even one level higher and say, okay, we're basically in a new era of water management here in the valley, the basin, and for Tammy to frame in the overview, what what BWD now can do and what the water master can do. Because as you say, people do confuse them, but if each group only speaks to its own projects, it won't I don't think it'll be clear enough what's going on.
Well, and that might be my job in the closing comments. You know what I
It might
mean?
be good to do
After
that.
everyone's. I'm sorry?
It might be good to do that at the beginning so that people, as I say, have a framework on which to hang, what they're hearing. But also, I mean, the water master folks should also get a chance to chime in on that.
Yeah, you're right on, Diane. That was the intent of Sam's comments. That was my thinking. Sam talks about the agency. We're talking about their individual roles as directors. But maybe that's a good suggestion to go even one step higher in the intro at the macro level to explain the difference between the two.
Yeah, I can do that in the
And
welcome. How about this? I can do that as part of the welcome, and I can do that again in the closing.
Yeah.
To remind, it's kind of like tell people what they're going to hear and then remind people what they heard.
Right. But I also have another whole different comment, but I'll let someone else go first if anyone else wants to say anything.
It's like Dave does.
Yeah, I do. It is not here specifically, but I think it's really important that ratepayers understand the economic impact of some of these grant-funded projects. I don't think that we need to go into detail about which projects are grant-funded, but I think that the economic consequence is tremendous to the district and the ratepayers. This particular board has been pretty aggressive and pretty successful at finding grant funding, for some of the things that need to be done here in terms of capital improvement projects. And I just think it's really important for the ratepayers to understand how much grant funding that there has been and the impact of that in terms of rates.
I would agree. So we can work that into the year in review as well. Diane, why don't you talk to us about what else you have on your mind?
Well, it's the outreach and engagement part. I think we now have through Esmeralda, for example, and some other avenues, ways of reaching the Hispanic community to tell them about this, the Spanish speaking community, I guess I should say. But of course, if we want to publicize it, then we need to wonder about doing translation at the meeting. And I know that's like a big thing to drop in the middle of this, but I do think we should think about it.
I'm trying to visualize how that would happen in a hybrid meeting. But I'll give it some thought.
I've seen it done in some hybrid water meetings that I've just been an attendee at, and it's hard. It's clumsy. One of the staff at CivicWell, Diana Vasconcelos, has done it. It can be done through the chat, for example, but then of course that assumes that the Spanish speaking folks are zooming in or go to meeting in. Yeah. So I think we maybe do need to have our subcommittee meeting or whatever.
Okay. We'll talk more about that.
Okay.
Anything else from the directors about the town hall? How about anybody in the public? Does anybody in the public have ideas or suggestions, comments about what they would like to see done in the town hall?
I have my hand up, but I'm not sure you're seeing it.
I'm not seeing,
Kathy.
yeah, I hear your voice, Rebecca, but I'm not seeing you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I'll turn my camera on. I just wanted to ask a quick question. Martha Deichler is the alternate, right? Not the community rep. Isn't Mark Jorgensen the community rep? Or is
Yes,
it
he is.
changed? I just
No.
wanted to make sure. Yeah, okay, because it's a little, I'm not sure you might want to put in parentheses alt or something like that, just so that she doesn't have to take responsibility more than she has. And just not to confuse people. Just not to
Yeah.
confuse people. I get what you're doing. You're just putting a rep from each sector. I get that.
Yeah.
The,
You're
on the
right.
Spanish speaking thing, I don't, I think they do it on a they do it on a different system, but the county, of course, with much greater resources than you have, has this system for online meetings where at the beginning, an icon shows up at the bottom of the screen that you click on to say whether whether you're participating in English or Spanish. And then I don't know, and then you get siphoned into a separate I don't know what happens to the Spanish speakers because I'm not one, but it's separate somehow. And I could try if anybody wants to consult with how the county does it, I can try to find that out for you or connect you with that information. But they have a whole system for it.
Sure. That could be very helpful, maybe um, just to find out how it works. It might require specialized resources that we don't have access to, but it would be interesting to know how they do it.
Okay, I'll send you that information, Kathy.
Thank you. Paul, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just a brief one on the Spanish translation. When I was doing the disaster response in Puerto Rico, we had hybrid bilingual half an hour daily stand-up meetings in at the headquarters, and it really relied on having a really effective translator, and then you would speak for a moment, they would translate into Spanish, and then you would continue on, and vice versa. And it was pretty effective, but I don't know if we have a highly capable translator that we could rely on for doing something like that.
So currently our meeting is allowing what, an hour and a half for this whole process? Maybe if we allowed 2 hours, we could do a bilingual type meeting, but these are details that the committee can talk about. Tammy.
Yeah.
I
Thank
did
you, Paul, by the way.
one bilingual presentation, and I found that it's like obviously the English speaker, but I had to have clear, short, concise. It changes your presentation if you know that the words you're about to say are going to get translated. You have to say less, and you have to have really sort of simple English to give the poor translator a chance to translate it and not lose the context. And you need to break it into sections that are sort of logical sections. So I think if we're going to do that, we need to let our presenters know, because to do it well, I kind of got to develop the rhythm of like how much I could say before my translator got lost. It's just a little different than just being able to give an English a presentation all in your native language.
Yeah.
So if you would go that route, I think it's important to prep your presenters on how to do, especially if they haven't done it, on how to do it well for the audience.
Gotcha. Okay. Anyone else? So we have a little bit of work. Our committee will work on some of these things. I think those are all great comments. And our next meeting is just before the town hall, right? Week before. So we will come back with a more definite plan, and of course also the outreach portion, getting the word out on the town hall so that we can get some actual participation. So
Kathy, I'm going to go to that other meeting for a few minutes, so excuse
okay,
me. Thanks.
sounds good, Diane. We'll see you when you get back. Okay, so back to the Section 2, we're down to 2F, which is the Borrego Springs Subbasin Water Master Board. And I will let Dave Duncan address us on that one.
There was the
There we
2E.
go.
Oh, sorry.
So nothing necessarily new to report since our last meeting, other than maybe we have a new slate of officers. I once again remain chair, which I am happy to do. But I guess that's kind of the biggest thing that happened. Of course, the board did agree to participate in the town hall, which I felt was very positive. And our next meeting is November the 10th. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. And Trey, I know, I think I saw you up here a while back. Are you still with us? And would you like to update us on the TAC activities?
Sure. Can you hear me all right, Chair Dice?
Yes,
Trey?
thank you. Hi, Trey.
Yeah.
Just Kathy, just know you skipped one item. You'll have to, after Trey, we have to go back and catch it.
I did? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I did. Thank you. I was anxious to get to this topic, so we'll move back to the other one when we're.
Just
Hi,
stay here.
Trey.
Good morning, President Dyson and chair members. So last week, on Wednesday, October 19th, I had a call with Andy Malone at West Yost to discuss the TSS monitoring well design, plan specifications, and roles and responsibilities. The TSS well design will be discussed at the next TAC meeting on Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022. We expect to proceed with the general plans and specifications following the meeting, where we will seek input from the TAC members on the final design. We believe the West Yost staff is going to help us provide the draft monitoring well technical specifications. As part of the TSS agreement execution with Department of Water Resources, Water Master staff has recommended that Borrego Water District should submit an official request to the Borrego Springs Water Master regarding cost sharing of all non-TSS allowed costs. And currently with our discussions with DWR, we expect these non-refundable costs would include any preparations of plans and specifications, just general project management, the initial land clearing of the property, and the drilling pad preparation. So that's my kind of summary on the TSS agreement. The next item is that Watermaster staff released the draft technical memorandum, groundwater monitoring gap analysis for the Borrego Springs. This is another item that will be discussed at the November 2nd TAC meeting. I've reviewed this TM. 2 weeks following the TAC meeting, we are to provide any comments on the TM. Just kind of a high-level overview without getting into the weeds too much. In general, it lacked a detailed evaluation of all available data and data sources for the basin. There was a strong focus just on the Water Master monitored wells and not necessarily all wells and data from other agencies. I really think this is a foundational task. There was not really a robust compilation of data analysis, such as determining current trends in water quality. I think this is really important so you can prioritize where you may want to fill data gaps. Those are just two of the items that I think we really need to focus on for this really critical task for the basin. And it really, we're already almost into November, and a water quality monitoring plan which is the end product to the court, is due in April 2023. So one thing I am going to request at the TAC meeting is that they provide a schedule that includes sufficient time for review, revision, and comment for all the TAC members and stakeholders to review this plan prior to its submitted to the court in April 2023. And then finally, just kind of an informational item, I made a presentation last week to the County of San Diego Borrego Springs Community Sponsor Group, the Water and Land Use Planning Subcommittee regarding the de minimis well construction and North Management Area water quality. And I believe the result of that meeting is that this Land Use Planning Subcommittee is going to submit a comment letter to the county regarding approval of that de minimis well. That's my summary for you. I apologize if I sound like I'm talking from the bottom of a pool, but I have a little bit of a head cold today.
Well, I'm glad it's just a cold, and I hope that's how it stays.
Yeah, thank you.
Does any members of the board of directors have any comments or questions for Travis? Dave?
Yeah, Trey, will the TAC be making specific recommendations to the Water Master Board as to how to fill those gaps? Or is it just going to be, hey, there's gaps?
I think the answer is yes, that as part of the review and comment on the TM, that TAC members will be making specific recommendations regarding analysis of data collected by the water master, availability of additional data sources, and considering the number of data gaps that were identified, there really has to be there's only so much money to go around. There really has to be a prioritization of filling data gaps. And right now, I think one of those focuses is certainly water quality in the North Management Area.
Yeah, I was surprised that there were as many data gaps in all the management areas that were identified. It was a number larger, I guess, than I would have suspected for the central and southern management areas.
I think there's some existing data, such as data from other sources like landfills and other agencies that can be used to fill some of those data gaps. But certainly some of the data gaps identified in the South Management Area, where there really is not much in the way of potable production, I just don't see that those would be highly prioritized for an example.
All right, thank you, Trey.
Of course.
Tammy?
Trey, I attended the meeting for the WATCO, the sponsor group WATCO presentation you gave, and you showed a chart that was a projection of the nitrate level into the future, so the red dots on the line. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Trey, so I hadn't seen that before. Have you sent that out to all of us? Was I the only one that missed that?
I certainly can send that out. I thought I had presented that once before to the Borrego Water District Board, but it's just a linear future forecast of the water quality trend for Borrego Water District well ID 418 based on the increasing nitrate trend. So yeah, I can send that out for sure.
I do remember seeing something like that in the slide deck.
The takeaway is the nitrate level increases, in my words, dramatically. That's what the projection was. I was surprised by that slope. So if you could send that again, because I did miss it and I do pay attention. Thank you, Trey.
Yes, you do.
Of course. Yeah, that was an example of some of the detail that I felt was lacking in the TM, was that there was no trend analysis of the water quality data. So there should have been clearly for the district as well, which is part of the monitoring network for the water master, it should have been called out of these increasing concentrations in that well. And to me, it's a way of prioritizing which data gaps you fill. So that'll be something I'll be commenting on at the TAC meeting.
Thanks. Anyone else on the board of directors? And how about the public? Are there members of the public that would like to speak to this topic? John.
Kathy, I've got two things. Trey, thank you very much. We do have a meeting of the water committee for the sponsor group this afternoon at 3 o'clock that will be talking about the recommendation letter that were given to the sponsor group in regard to the de minimis well. We support the water district in the terms of their letter to the water master board in regard to the well construction and to ensure that we don't have vertical migration down wells, annuluses, et cetera, et cetera. So that letter will likely be going to the sponsor group at the next sponsor group. The second topic, Diane Johnson did give me a copy of the technical memorandum on the data gap analysis on the monitoring. And there was a number of issues in there that kind of went off in bells and whistles for me. That I know this is just a preliminary thing, but I'm sure you all have it. But if you take a look at figure B-1, that's boy-1, which shows the TDS numbers and the different wells that we have within within the basin. Again, B-1. The one that concern is the TDS, which is total dissolved solids. We have one well just in the middle of the northern part of the basin that has a TDS greater than 1,000 milligrams per liter, which is high. That's not long-term, potable use. It's right in the middle of the basin, and we really have no data for water coming to it or going down from it in the terms of the groundwater flow. So there's a number of issues that this particular report highlight that basically says that, yes, it appears that we have a problem. And bottom line is we don't really know much about it. And we don't have any data collection that's occurring in the area that would help us to understand what's going on. That's it for me.
Thanks, John. Any other comments, questions for Trey?
And John, if you have any technical comments, feel free to submit them to me in an email, and I can compile them as part of the Borrego Water District letter that will go to the water master.
Great.
I appreciate that. We'll probably talk about it, at the water committee meeting coming up in the terms of seasonal trends and things like this. There's a number of issues there that deals with the seasonal trends in groundwater levels in the north part of the basin. When I was with the county, we monitored on a quarterly basis, and it showed a strong seasonal analysis in that the water levels actually came up in the fall when the pumps were going offline because the trees were using less and going down. And there's a real strong seasonal analysis, and we're not getting any of that data at all when we're just monitoring twice a year. So we can put that in the letter also.
Good. Thank you, John. Thank you, Trey. I encourage those who can to listen in on the TAC meeting on November 2nd and the Water Master meeting on November 10th. Thanks, Trey.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move backwards to item 2E, which I somehow overlooked. The BWD board meeting schedule for November and December.
Thank you, Madam President. Boy, I can't believe it, but the year is rapidly coming to an end. Just the way our fourth Tuesday of the month works out, that falls in Thanksgiving week and Christmas week. So I think recently we've kind of kept that date open and ready to hold a meeting if it's needed. So I think what we'd like to do is still have the first meeting in each month, the first meeting in November, the first meeting in December. Then, dependent upon workload, have the flexibility to call a special meeting for one of the following Tuesdays as needed to address any sort of hot topics that need to be addressed by the board. And if there aren't any, then I think the plan would be to just hold the first meeting in November and the first meeting in December on our normal dates, which would be the second Tuesday.
Do we need to have a vote on that, or can we, Steve, what do we need to do to make this a reality? Anything?
Point you need to do anything because it sounds like it's still up in the air, if I understood correctly. So
So basically, because the second meeting is a special meeting, we don't necessarily have to hold it.
right. I'm trying to think back to a lot of agencies adopt resolutions related to the regular board meeting schedule, and I just can't remember whether you do that or not.
Well, we did that in January, and I can't remember if it listed regular meetings and special meetings or just regular meetings. So, you know what?
Yeah, well, either way, you can make a game time call on that. The week before, you can decide to not have those meetings as board president. So it's okay either way.
I think it's a good idea for the holiday season, to just for sure have a first meeting, the regular business meeting, and call a special meeting if there is, business that must be dealt with in that time period. Does that make sense?
Excellent. And then, Madam President, we will probably have an idea if there's a possibility that a special meeting would be needed at that first meeting of each month. So when we're sitting here on the second Tuesday of the month, we will probably know, we might need a meeting 2 weeks from now. And so I can report that. So I will give you all a heads up on the likelihood of needing that second meeting when we have the first meeting each month.
Okay, that sounds good.
Excellent. Subject to change.
Okay. So one meeting unless we need 2 meetings in November and December.
Excellent.
All right, let's move on to section 3, the board committee reports. Standing and ad hoc, we have already spoken to the town hall kind of the public outreach, but that's the latest thing that we're working on. Does anyone else have board committee reports for either standing or ad hoc?
Hey, Madam President, kind of structurally speaking, since the WWTP monitoring well situation is coming to an end, maybe how about this? Let's keep this committee for one more meeting in case we need something that pops up with the exhibits. But I think maybe at the next meeting we might want to transition that from the monitoring wells to more the T2 development agreement stuff. So it'd be nice to have another special ad hoc committee that's there to help me as we talk to T2 going forward about their development plans.
Okay, is that different from the developer's policy?
I would say, yeah. To me, the developer's policy is the overall document and not one specific developer.
Okay, very good. Okay, I saw somebody. Tammy.
Just a super brief update on cybersecurity. I met again with Jessica Travis, like the IT department, and just to update the board that the Borrego IT group is continuing to implement the recommendations from CISA, the group that came in and did the assessment, months ago. So just an update that, as one would hope and expect, IT is continuing to ever improve our cybersecurity. That's all.
That's always good news. Does anyone else have anything to report? Well, all right then. Let's go on to section 4, our monthly financial and operations reports. Probably would mean that Jessica needs to speak with us. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, how you doing?
Everybody's good. You got a little bit of an echo there.
Let's mute Jeff over here. All right. So just a quick review on financials for September. All of the board reports are in there. You got the treasurer's report, balance sheet, AP reports. Just to go through what happened in September. Our total rate revenue was just under 430,000. We were a little low on the commercial and irrigation water sales, and residential too. Well, that was higher, but I think the rains, maybe people are watering less, but nothing too out of the ordinary. Looking at our operating expenses, tires are really expensive right now. We paid almost $3,000 on tires for the dump truck, which was a big portion of our budget for the year. I'm talking with the crew and, making sure that they let me know before there's big expenses on that so we can make sure we have the money. Also, our lab testing fees were almost $10,000 this month. There were some 3-year reports that Alan did, and yeah, they were not cheap. Staff, we did have some paid time off vacation hours that were cashed out, so that was a little over usual. Catching up on the last of the summer electric bills, kind of bumped things up on there. And then the other category that was a little high was our Interra work with the water master. So that first bill they sent us was last month. They were waiting for the contract to get finalized, which did include work from prior to this fiscal year. So we're just going to have to keep an eye on that category to make sure we stay within budget. That all resulted in a net income after expenses of $175,000. And then we put a lot into our CIP projects. And Alan did pick up that new pickup truck. If you see Hugo driving around town in the silver Bullet with the BWD logo, it's gorgeous. It was about $2,500 over budget. That is with all of our inflation issues and supply chain. I know Alan really had trouble even getting a truck at all. So we might have to move some monies from our general operating fund. Working on the twin tanks, and we did pay the retention on the wastewater treatment plant upgrade project. So just to look at cash flow, current reserves at the end of September were just under 7.8 million, but that was before our debt service all went out. Everything else was pretty normal. Does anybody have any questions or concerns on revenues and expenses and accounting matters?
Anyone have any questions for Jessica?
All right. Well, that was September.
You explained, we're all pretty aware of higher costs of everything right now, so appreciate you explaining that.
Of course.
What specifically is costing us more? Thank you, Jessica.
You're welcome.
4B looks like the water and wastewater operations report. Roy, are you here today? Looks like. Roy, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
So I'm here. Hey, good morning to everybody. So I don't know if you guys have any questions for me. My report should be there. I don't know if Esmeralda is on charge right now. And basically, everything at the wastewater plant, it's working the way it should. I have no problems. The only little issue that I've been having, it's with one of the customers, which is on Borrego Valley Road, where we have an air vent, which is near Javier Valtierra. He called me last night that there was a lot of fumes, and he kept asking me, hey, you need to get rid of that air vent, put it somewhere else. And, I was telling him, it's part of the force main, we need to get rid of some of the fumes inside. Otherwise, we can have a big explosion there. So I have some media that I use there. So this morning I went over there. I have like a basket that goes inside the manhole. Next time we have a meeting, I'm going to take a picture and show it to you guys so you know what I'm talking about. It's just a basket that sits, I take the lid out of the manhole, and there's a basket that sits in there, and then I put media and then I wet it, and it absorbs all the odors. But it only lasts like a month or so. So I have to continue changing that all the time. But other than that, the flow went a little bit higher for this weekend. We went up to 88,000 gallons instead of the 50s or 40s that I was getting. So that was pretty good, and that could be part of all the gases on that line, that it disturbed all the slash that has been there for weeks. Other than that, everything is normal. I don't know if you guys have any questions or concerns on anything else.
Questions are for Roy?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Madam President. I found it interesting. I was communicating with Roy over the weekend about the flows during Borrego days. So it was interesting that we went up to, I guess it was 82,000 on Saturday, maybe a little higher. You said 85,000, Roy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So basically, it almost double of the flow that I was getting, in the past. But from now and on, you can see more people in town. So the flow is gonna start continuing to raise a little bit more, and then I'm gonna have to move my operations over here at the wastewater now with more flow.
Yeah.
Right. The season has begun.
Yeah, I know. I'm ready for these. I like this weather.
It feels pretty good out there, that's for sure. That's
Yeah.
going to bring our snowbirds back in pretty soon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Roy.
Yeah, no
Appreciate it.
problem. Thank you, guys.
And the water production and use records, they're, I think, in the packet.
Yeah, and I think Alan's under the weather, so he's not here with us today. So if
That's
there are
all
any
right.
questions, I'm happy to answer them, but it looks like
Looks like they're kind of normal. So. All right, so let's go to the staff report, section 5. The first one is the administration report with Diana.
Yes. Here I am. Y'all hear me? Okay. All right. So yes, a little bit for what's happening here in the office. Just want to let you all know, if you didn't already know, that Val is back from vacation, and we missed her dearly and very happy to have her back. We are still helping our customers transition from PSN to Civic Pay. Our first focus was making sure that our customers had their ACH or their automatic payments switched over. And now the focus is getting those customers who were receiving their bills through email through PSN to register their account with Civic Pay and then choose the e-bill option. I sent an email out to about 200 customers yesterday addressing this issue, letting them know that they may not receive their statement unless they choose that option. So we are expecting phone calls and emails to come in, and we are going to be helping each of those customers get set up. Hoping by the end of the year, everything is all set up and customers are where they need to be or where they want to be. We had another month of high reach, and we've made those courtesy calls to those customers. The high reads and the request for leak adjustments sparked a conversation with us here in the office. And it was determined that customer education is necessary, as well as education for the landscapers. So our tentative plan is to be working with providing some handouts and some tools for these customers, putting these handouts on the website, and also possibly reviewing the leak adjustment policy. But I think that the biggest factor was getting some materials out there to help educate our customers for leaks and learning how to read their meters and so forth. So that is something that we're going to be working on. We'll be having our part-time helper here in the office. She will be starting on November 1st, and so we're super excited about that. And we're going to be getting a list of her duties together, so kind of alleviate some of the stress on maybe the customer service portion of our office here. See, Alan, Jessica, Manuel, and I did attend the JPA conference last week. Very informative. We each went to 2 classes a day, and we had 2 days of classes. Again, each of the classes are very informative, and I think we all took away tools to help enable us to perform our duties better, and maybe even improve some things as far as, like, for instance, I took, I think Jessica and I took the ergonomics class, and we definitely can be using some of those skills that we learned in that classes to bring them here in the office. So just a small little example of some of the things that we went through. Very, very great classes. I'd highly recommend going again. Let's see, I am working on getting first aid and CPR classes here for the staff. I've made a couple phone calls. I'm just waiting back to hear from our local fire department here, and hoping that they can perform those classes for us. And then I did change out the batteries and the CPR, the AED, the pads in our AED that we have here in the office. So just kind of looking at some safety matters here.
Good.
Other than that, we're just rolling along.
Great. So can you share who your new helper is going to be?
Yeah. Just
It is Ms. Laura Manzano. She's currently doing accounts payable for Borrego Health, and has graciously provided them with her 2 weeks notice that she's completing right now.
Well, that's good news. And Diana, are you considering the idea of, I know for a while, and I don't remember if we still are, putting newsletter items enclosing them in the bills? Would that be something you would consider for your customer education and the leaks issue and all of that, is like a bill insert? Or
yes,
I guess
I think
you have the online customers, so I guess putting it online would be important too. But I'm just thinking about something that people could actually have in their hands for the people you mail bills to.
right, absolutely. I think that is our main avenue to get the materials out to the customers, is through their bill statements. And so for those bills that are emailed, we can also attach them to those as well. And yeah, and also putting them in, putting it into maybe the Borrego Sun.
Yeah, that would
hand
be
out on the front desk as well.
Yeah. You can also, talk about, mention something in our town hall in November that we, that we're, we're from the water district and we're here to help, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments for Diana? As usual, we really appreciate everything that you're doing, with you and the staff are doing in the office.
They're fabulous.
So now we go back to Jessica for finance talks.
All right. So just an update on what's going on. Let's see, we're waiting for our Water Master BPA assessment. We did get the water year accounting, and we have elected to take our full carryover allotment. So Sam and team is supposed to get us that bill on the 31st. Otherwise, staff has been going through our annual open enrollment period for medical insurance. Everybody seems happy with JPIA offers us really great plans, and nobody has even wanted to change. So just to update on that. Also been working on our fiscal year 22 audit. I have received word from Leaf and Coal last week that they are extremely behind. Neil, every year I have a list of standard items I sent over. I'm probably about 95% complete on that, and I have gotten crickets back. So I think it's going to be a while this year. He did mention they had some staff shortages there. Also, this is our 4th year using that audit firm, so I know it's customary to change every 5 years or so. So that's something we can talk about with the audit committee. And then Tammy, you did bring up the IT. So yeah, we haven't really updated you guys much on this lately, but we did finish all of our big projects from last year, which was like updating the new server and getting our SCADA system. Everything's working great. Now we're focusing more on policy items and staff training and the things that were brought up in the CISA review, and we're also having Travis look into potentially having someone else available in case of emergency if he's not around. He does have someone in mind, so that could be very beneficial in an emergency. And that's about all that's new in my world.
All right. Well, we appreciate all that you're doing, Jessica. So, yeah, thank you.
I see some questions, Mr. Duncan.
Yes.
Yeah, what was the cost of last year's audit?
I think it was about 15,000. I have it here in my email. I can let you know exactly. Sorry, my apologies. I don't know, maybe I lost it. But yeah, I know I did pull that last week. I'll send it to you again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Tammy.
Is there any risk on meeting our deadlines for audits, given that the audit company is so far behind?
There are requirements. So like we do need to submit our reports to the state controller's office, as well as some other entities. What we've done in the past is just sent them a letter like kind of the middle of December, because I believe they're due the 1st of the year. So in the past, we've sent them an email like December 15th and just kind of been like, hey, we're working on it. Sorry, it's a little late. And they're very understanding, and they've been lenient in the past on that.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Jessica.
You're welcome.
Looks like we're ready for our engineering report with Mr. Dale. Hi, David.
Yeah, I did.
I see you, but I don't hear you. There you are.
Good morning.
Good morning, David.
Yeah, I just have a quick update. We are starting to shove off on the tank replacement project. We got the contract documents almost signed and ready to go. I have received multiple submittals as of today. So I'll be spending the next day or two reviewing submittals, reviewing those. I believe Alan has a schedule that he has a preference for the contractor to, on the tank replacements. And so we're getting going on that one. And Alan and I also are planning to attend a smart meter conference in the next couple of weeks, so we can get some more information on the advanced meters, and so we can bring back some more information on that. I know we're starting to get a little antsy to get going on the design and contract documents on those ones. So wanted to see what we can bring back from that conference. If there's any useful information, we'll let you know. Pretty much.
Right.
That's. Go ahead.
I was going to say, does anyone have any questions for David, for Mr. Dale? I guess that covers it. We're looking forward to seeing how things progress. Thank you, David. Let's see. Last but not least, yeah, the aliens have invaded. Last but not least, we have our general manager report.
Okay, so let's chat about the Prop 68 status and then the sub-grantee agreements. DWR had some remaining questions for the Stewardship Council project, even after their questions that they had from 2 or 3 weeks ago that BVSC responded to. DWR had even more questions and then exacerbated even further during DWR's legal review. Questions popped up. So kind of a new set of questions and comments popped up about that project. And BVSC folks had a great idea, and that is, hey, can we talk to Chris Martinez directly? So there have been 2 phone calls, sounding like there's one going on as we speak. The first phone call was last week, in which I do believe some really good progress was made, and it does sound like the Stewardship Council project will survive and continue through the process and be included in the grant agreement. But then it also sounds like there are some issues that need to be resolved that is part of the conversation today. So that is really that project is the last remaining obstacle that's in the way of DWR issuing the final BWD agreement, because they want to make sure all of their issues have been addressed in the contract documents, and including their questions. There are a lot of conceptual questions and questions about the overall goals of the project and everything as it pertains to the Stewardship Council projects themselves. So I expect those to be resolved hopefully on the phone call today, and a relatively quick turnaround with DWR to get us back the final version of the agreement. In a perfect world, we would get that final draft in time to put on the agenda for the November 8th, I believe, is our next meeting. That election. Yeah, it is, isn't it? So we'll be meeting again on election day. And so hopefully the final agreement would be available so I could put it in the packet a couple days before that. And then we're also planning on including the sub-grantee agreements. And then Steve has been talking to Jim Markman about their comments to make sure that all of their questions and comments and concerns have been addressed in the final version of the Water Master sub-grantee agreement. So we've got a number of parallel tracks running, and I think they all should converge in a very good way without a train wreck on the other end. And we'll have all the information we need in terms of being able to present to you the final version of the DWR agreement for the overall grant, and then our individual agreements with each one of our sub-grantees, which would be Water Master, UCI, the school district, and the Borrego Valley Stewardship Council. So hopefully early November, we will have everything approved and we can officially get started.
Oh, well, it's been a long road so far. I hope it gets easier. Any questions for Jeff? Well, alrighty then. I think we are through our regular agenda. We're going to go into closed session here in a few minutes. So our next board meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m. on November 8th, which is also election day. Please remember to vote. Vote, vote. It's a very important product of our democracy. So, I should probably mention that I am working at the polls that day. So Tammy, I will depend on you to be the leader of the pack that day. And I also wanted to take a final opportunity to thank Paul for your service. I'm really sorry that we have to lose you, but I think that your new endeavor sounds exciting and rewarding, I hope. So thanks again for your service, since I will not be at the November 8th meeting. But I will see you if you come in to vote in person.
I'll see you there. Thank you.
So we're going to go into closed session. It is now 11:04. How about 11:10 for closed session? Does that work? Okay, we'll see you in a few minutes. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.